In 1961, Jackie Gleason made the worst TV show ever. CBS cut the worst parts. Now the real tapes are out. Watch him curse at the camera, forget his lines, and collapse on set. His co-stars had to drag him through scenes while he slurred his words. This footage finally reveals why the Honeymooners really ended, and it wasn't because of running out of ideas. After you see this tape, you'll never look at Ralph Kramden the same way again. Jackie Gleason was born Herbert Walton Gleason, Jr. on February 26, 1916, in Brooklyn, New York. His parents, Herbert Sr. and Maisie Gleason, were Irish immigrants trying to build a life in America. His father worked as an insurance auditor. His mother was a subway change booth attendant. They lived in a modest home at 364 Chauncey Street in Bushwick, a working-class neighborhood where every dollar mattered. Life took a tragic turn when Jackie was just 9 years old. On December 15, 1925, his father walked out and never came back. Before leaving, he burned every photograph he was in and quit his job without telling anyone. No explanation, no warning, just gone. Jackie never saw him again. Even after he became famous, he admitted that he sometimes wondered if his father might show up in the audience or backstage. That day never came. His mother, now alone, had to work even harder to support them. She picked up extra shifts, while Jackie spent more and more time on the streets. He started skipping school and hanging around pool halls, learning from local hustlers. But something unexpected happened. He took part in a class play and felt something new. He loved being on stage. For the first time, he saw a different future for himself. That wasn't the only heartbreak in Jackie's life. Years before his father left, when Jackie was just 3, his older brother Clement died of spinal meningitis. Clement had been frail since birth, and his death changed everything. His mother became overprotective, terrified of losing another child. She kept Jackie inside, away from the rough streets of Brooklyn. While other kids played outside, Jackie watched from behind a window. He later said this loneliness shaped his signature poor soul expression, a look he used in his comedy for years. Tragedy struck again when Jackie was 19. His mother developed a carbuncle on her neck, a painful infection. They were too poor to afford a doctor, so she asked Jackie to lance it at home. It led to a deadly bacterial infection. She died shortly after. Jackie blamed himself for the rest of his life. The guilt stayed with him, a wound that never fully healed. When his mother died in 1935, she left behind only 36 cents. That was all Jackie had. No family, no money, no home. A friend's family offered to take him in, but Jackie refused. He didn't want charity. He was going to make it on his own. The Great Depression made survival even harder. With unemployment soaring past 20%, Jackie took whatever work he could find. He worked as a carnival barker, a pool hall hustler, and an MC at small theaters for just a few dollars a night. Anything to stay afloat. At night, he performed at amateur comedy shows, failing more often than he succeeded. But he kept learning. He studied audiences, figured out what made people laugh, and turned his struggles into humor. His first real break came when a friend named Sammy Birch helped him land a week-long gig at Tiny's Chateau nightclub in Reading, Pennsylvania. The pay was just $19 for 7 nights, but it was a start. On his first night, he bombed. He had borrowed jokes from other comedians, and the audience saw right through it. Truckers and miners heckled him non-stop. Jackie refused to give up. The next night, he changed everything. He stopped using scripted jokes and started reacting to the audience in real time. He insulted hecklers, made fun of himself, and used his weight as part of his act. "I'm not fat, I'm just easy to see," he joked. The crowd loved it. His Broadway debut in Along Fifth Avenue got mixed reviews, but he didn't slow down. He kept performing late into the night at clubs where New York's most powerful people gathered. Those years shaped his comedy and taught him that success in show business wasn't just about talent. It was about persistence, charm, and knowing how to work a crowd. His first big break came in 1941 at Club 18. Jack Warner, the head of Warner Brothers, was in the audience that night. Gleason, known for his insult humor, didn't hesitate to take a shot at him. "Is that your head, sir? Or are you diapering a baby?" Instead of getting offended, Warner was impressed. He offered Gleason a one-year contract worth $250 a week, a huge amount at the time. That deal got him roles in 6 Hollywood films, including Navy Blues and All Through the Night. The movies weren't major hits, but they gave him experience. He worked alongside stars like Humphrey Bogart and Betty Grable, learning how Hollywood operated. But he struggled to stand out. He didn't fit the mold of a traditional leading man, and the industry didn't quite know what to do with him. Hollywood wasn't working out the way he hoped, but television changed everything. By the early 1950s, he had become a regular on Cavalcade of Stars. His energy, quick wit, and larger-than-life presence made him a fan favorite. In 1951, CBS took notice and signed him for The Jackie Gleason Show. The show premiered live on September 20th, 1952, and was an instant success. It pulled in a staggering 42% rating, making Gleason one of the biggest names on TV. What made him different was the way he connected with people. He wasn't just performing, he was showing them a version of themselves. That was the secret behind The Honeymooners, where he played Ralph Kramden, a struggling bus driver with big dreams. When The Honeymooners premiered as a standalone sitcom on CBS in October 1955, it had already been a fan favorite. The characters first appeared in short sketches on Cavalcade of Stars in 1951, and later on, The Jackie Gleason Show. But when it became a full-fledged series, audiences connected with it in a way few shows had before. Ralph Kramden wasn't a perfect husband. He had a temper. He was impatient. But he was also deeply in love with Alice and fiercely loyal to his best friend, Ed Norton. Gleason wanted the focus to stay on the marriage, which is why the Kramdens never had children. Keeping the story centered on their relationship made the show stand out. At its peak, The Honeymooners was the #2 show in America, right behind I Love Lucy. But success didn't last long. It faced tough competition from The Perry Como Show on NBC, and ratings started to slip. By September 1956, it had fallen to number 19. After just 39 episodes, Gleason made the shocking decision to end the series. He believed they had run out of fresh ideas and didn't want to risk making weak episodes. Producing so many episodes in one season had been exhausting, and the cost of keeping the show going was high. Rather than stretching it out, Gleason walked away. Even though The Honeymooners ended after one season, its legacy didn't fade. The classic 39 episodes became one of the most rerun series in television history. Decades later, it still holds an 8.6 rating on IMDb and a perfect score on Rotten Tomatoes. Its influence is impossible to ignore. Ralph Kramden inspired Fred Flintstone. Shows like All in the Family and Roseanne built on its realistic portrayal of working-class life. And in 1999, an 8-foot bronze statue of Kramden was placed outside the Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan, honoring the character and the man who created him. But while the show looked effortless on screen, things behind the scenes weren't always smooth. Gleason had a unique approach to acting. he refused to rehearse. He believed spontaneity made performances feel real, but it also led to problems. He would sometimes forget lines, forcing Audrey Meadows, Alice, and Art Carney, Ed, to help him recover. Meadows became especially skilled at using subtle glances and gestures to guide him back on track. Despite their chemistry on screen, Gleason kept his distance from his co-stars. Art Carney once admitted that their relationship was strictly professional. Even Audrey Meadows had a rocky start. Gleason initially rejected her for the role of Alice, thinking she looked too young. Determined to prove him wrong, she sent in photos of herself looking more tired and worn down. It worked. She got the part and became one of television's most beloved TV wives. Gleason wasn't just the star. He had control over nearly every aspect of the show. He had a say in scripts, staging, and production, which led to clashes with writers and crew members. He also demanded perfection, adding pressure to an already intense filming schedule. The show was taped live at the Adelphi Theater in New York with no retakes. If a mistake happened, they had to work around it. Some of Ralph's mannerisms, like patting his stomach, were actually Gleason stalling for time when he forgot his lines. Although the Honeymooners ended after one season, Gleason wasn't done with the character. Ralph Kramden and his world returned in sketches on The Jackie Gleason Show from 1966 to 1970. Later, they appeared in musical specials known as The Color Honeymooners. These revivals never quite captured the magic of the original, but they kept the characters alive for a new generation. Jackie Gleason was a comedian and actor, but in 1952, he did something no one saw coming. He released an album called Music for Lovers Only, and it changed the music industry. The album wasn't loud or flashy. It was soft, romantic, and designed to create a mood. It blended lush orchestration with jazz influences, something that felt intimate rather than demanding attention. People loved it. The album spent 153 weeks in the Billboard Top 10, a record that still stands today. Gleason wasn't a musician in the traditional sense. He couldn't read or write music, but he had an ear for what sounded right. He was fascinated by how background music in movies made romantic scenes more powerful. He wanted to create something similar. Music that could play softly in the background while people enjoyed dinner, drinks, or a quiet night. He called it musical wallpaper. To bring his idea to life, he gathered top arrangers and musicians. Even though he didn't compose the music himself, he gave clear direction. He described the sounds he wanted, sometimes humming melodies, and his team turned those ideas into polished arrangements. The album included classics like My Funny Valentine and I'm in the Mood for Love, songs that became closely tied to romantic jazz. The success of Music for Lovers Only was just the beginning. Gleason followed up with albums like Music, Martinis and Memories, and Lonesome Echo. His first 10 albums all sold over 1 million copies each, an achievement few could match. Surprisingly, none of the singles from these albums charted on their own. The magic wasn't in any one song. It was in the way the albums created a mood from start to finish. At the time, the music industry was changing fast. Bebop jazz was dominant, and rock and roll was on the rise. Romantic instrumentals didn't seem like a sure bet, but Gleason saw something others didn't. He realized there was an audience for music that set a mood rather than demanding attention. He gave them exactly that. His albums became a staple in many households, proving that he understood what people wanted to hear. One of the key reasons his music worked so well was the talent he surrounded himself with. His most important collaborator was jazz trumpeter Bobby Hackett. Between 1953 and 1960, Hackett's warm and fluid trumpet playing became a signature sound in Gleason's recordings. He was given the freedom to improvise, which added richness to the arrangements. Other musicians, like trumpeter Pee Wee Irwin and saxophonist Charlie Ventura, also contributed to Gleason's productions. Gleason was known for treating his musicians well. In the 1950s, big band jazz was fading, and many session players were struggling to find work. Gleason gave them opportunities. He hired large orchestras, sometimes featuring as many as 27 violinists, to create the lush sound he envisioned. His approach went beyond traditional jazz. He blended classical elements with easy listening, making something new. Another key figure in Gleason's success was arranger Pete King. King played a crucial role in taking Gleason's ideas and turning them into fully developed compositions. Their collaboration ensured that every album had a smooth and consistent feel. Jackie Gleason had a presence that was impossible to ignore. He could make people laugh with just a look, but he could also pull them into a scene with quiet intensity. In 1961, the Hustler introduced audiences to Minnesota Fats, a pool hall legend who barely needed words to prove his skill. The movie starred Paul Newman as Fast Eddie Felson, a young hustler trying to make a name for himself. But when Eddie stepped up to play against Fats, he quickly realized he was in over his head. Gleason's performance was smooth and effortless. He barely spoke, but every movement told a story. The way he chalked his cue, the way he lined up his shots, it all made him look like he had been playing for years. He wasn't faking it. Gleason spent hours perfecting his billiard skills to make sure everything looked real. Even with his large frame, he moved around the table with precision. His performance was so convincing that people believed he had always been a pool player. His time on screen was limited, but he made every second count. Critics noticed. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and the National Board of Review named him Best Supporting Actor of the Year. The role became so legendary that a real-life pool hustler named Rudolph Wanderone took the name Minnesota Fats, claiming he was the inspiration. The film's author, Walter Tevis, denied it, but by then, the name had already taken on a life of its own. More than 15 years later, Gleason took on a completely different role in Smokey and the Bandit, 1977. This time, he played Sheriff Buford T. Justice, a loud, overconfident lawman determined to catch the bandit, played by Burt Reynolds. The character was based on a real Florida Highway Patrol officer that Reynolds' father knew, which gave Gleason a starting point. But what made the role unforgettable was his ability to improvise. He was given the freedom to come up with his own dialogue, and he made the most of it. His lines became instant classics. What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law. I'm gonna barbecue your ass in molasses. One of the funniest scenes in the movie, where Buford sits down at a diner and unknowingly talks about Bandit while Bandit is sitting right next to him, was completely his idea. His mix of arrogance and incompetence made Buford the perfect comedic villain. The movie was a massive success. It earned $127 million at the box office on a budget of just $4.3 million, making it the second highest-grossing film of the year behind Star Wars. Gleason's performance was a big reason for that success. The film's popularity led to 2 sequels, and Buford remained a fan favorite throughout. His constant insults toward his dim-witted son, Junior, added another layer of comedy. Every time Junior messed up, Buford's frustration made the moment even funnier. The Smokey and the Bandit trilogy cemented Gleason as one of the greatest comedic actors in film history. But he didn't just want to make people laugh. In 1962, he took on one of his most personal projects, Gigo. This was a movie he had dreamed about for years. He came up with the story, wrote the script, and even composed the film's music. Unlike his usual loud and boisterous roles, This time he played a mute janitor living in 1920s Paris. Without words, Gleason had to rely on gestures and facial expressions to communicate. He was inspired by Charlie Chaplin's The Kid and wanted to create a film that would move people on an emotional level. Gigot followed his character as he befriended a young girl named Nicole, the daughter of a prostitute. The townspeople mocked him, but he showed nothing but kindness. One of the film's most powerful scenes showed him trying to explain Christianity to Nicole using only gestures. It was a moment that revealed both his frustration at being unable to speak and his deep compassion for others. The movie didn't perform well at the box office. Some critics found it too sentimental. Others called it a vanity project. But even though it wasn't a hit, it showed a different side of Gleason. He wasn't just a comedian. He was an artist, willing to take risks. Jackie Gleason was one of the biggest names in television, but even legends make mistakes. In 1961, he launched a game show called You're in the Picture. It aired on January 20th, the same night as John F. Kennedy's inauguration. The concept was simple but strange. 4 celebrity panelists stuck their heads through cutouts in oversized illustrations. These images showed famous scenes or lyrics from songs. The panelists had to guess where they were by asking Jackie Gleason yes or no questions. If they got it right, 100 care packages were donated in their name. If they got it wrong, the donation went under Gleason's name. On paper, it might have sounded fun. In reality, it was a disaster. The game had no real stakes. The questions were dull. The audience had no reason to care. The panelists looked confused. The whole thing felt awkward and pointless. Critics were brutal. Time magazine called it the worst television show in the 13-year history of U.S. network television. Even Gleason knew it was bad. After the show ended, he asked a stagehand what he thought. The man hesitated and said, "The commercials were great." That told Gleason everything. The first episode featured scenes like Pocahontas rescuing John Smith and men staring at a woman in a bikini. But instead of being funny, these moments just fell flat. The game quickly became repetitive, and by the time the episode ended, it was clear that You're in the Picture would not last. 1 week later, on January 27th, Gleason did something no one expected. Instead of trying to fix the show, he scrapped it completely and turned the next episode into a live apology. He walked onto a bare stage with only a chair, a small table, an ashtray, and a coffee cup. There was no game, no panelists, no gimmicks, just Gleason talking to the audience. He started with complete honesty. "Last week, we did a show that laid, without a doubt, the biggest bomb in history." Then he compared it to an H-bomb and joked that over 300 years of entertainment experience had gone into making what he called a catastrophe. With his usual charm, he explained why the show had failed. He blamed the unpredictability of show business. Then, he playfully shifted responsibility to everyone else, even the stagehands who had told him the show was fine. The reaction was completely different this time. Viewers loved it. Critics who had trashed You're in the Picture suddenly praised Gleason for his honesty. The apology was more entertaining than the show itself. People appreciated that he didn't make excuses. He owned the failure and turned it into something funny. In an industry where mistakes were usually covered up, this was refreshing. But while the audience enjoyed Gleason's response, his sponsors did not. One joke in particular caused serious problems. At one point during his monologue, he lifted his coffee cup and said it was filled with chock full o' booze. The audience laughed, but Kellogg's did not. Kellogg's had co-sponsored the show along with Liggett and Myers, the company behind L&M cigarettes. But unlike the cigarette brand, Kellogg's had a family-friendly image. They didn't want their name associated with anything related to alcohol, even as a joke. Officially, Kellogg's said they pulled their sponsorship because You're in the Picture had turned into something completely different from what they had signed up for. But behind the scenes, it was clear that Gleason's offhand remark was the real reason. Liggett and Myers wasn't as upset. They liked how Gleason smoked cigarettes on air, which gave their brand free exposure. But without Kellogg's support, CBS had to rethink the entire show. They tried turning You're in the Picture into a talk show format called The Jackie Gleason Show. It featured celebrity interviews and comedy segments, but it didn't last. After just 7 more weeks, the show was canceled on March 24, 1961. Jackie Gleason was a powerhouse of talent, but his personal life was a storm of excess. His drinking wasn't just a bad habit, it was a constant presence in his life. He drank heavily on set, sometimes arriving already intoxicated. When he wasn't filming, he mixed whiskey into his coffee and kept going. This made him unpredictable, forcing cast members to improvise when he forgot lines or changed things on a whim. During the Honeymooners, his drinking caused entire productions to spiral into chaos. No one could stop him. He was the star, and the show had to go on. Away from work, things were just as wild. He was a regular at Toots Shore's bar in Manhattan, a place where drinking wasn't just allowed, it was encouraged. One night, after losing a bet over a bottle of scotch, he passed out right there at the bar. Instead of waking him up, the staff left him on the floor. Other customers stepped over him like it was just another night. That was how Gleason lived. Doctors warned him to stop, especially after he was diagnosed with diabetes. But he didn't listen. His usual lunch wasn't food. It was 6 double scotches with no water. His health suffered, but he refused to change. His spending habits were just as extreme. He lived in luxury, never holding back. His parties were so loud that hotels had to soundproof his suites. He bought a $30,000 Rolls-Royce with custom opal and burgundy paint. His mansion, a $650,000 circular home called Round Rock, had Italian marble fireplaces and even revolving pianos. Everything he owned was meant to impress. Food was another indulgence. He ate massive portions, sometimes ordering stacks of pizzas. His tailor called him the best-dressed stout man because of how many custom suits he ordered. Some cost thousands of dollars. Even his hobbies cost a fortune. When he played golf, he bet $100 per hole. He once lost $3,000 betting that Grace Kelly wouldn't marry Prince Rainier III of Monaco. His net worth peaked at $85 million, and while he gave money to charities, he never talked about it. His love life was just as chaotic. He married 3 times, but none of his marriages were smooth. His first wife, Genevieve Halford, married him in 1936, but she struggled with his constant partying and infidelity. They separated multiple times. In 1954, she visited him in the hospital after he broke his leg during filming, only to find another woman, Marilyn Taylor, already by his side. She filed for legal separation, but, because of her Catholic beliefs, refused to give him a divorce. It wasn't until 1970 that she finally agreed. Just 10 days after his divorce, he married Beverly McKittrick. But that marriage lasted only 5 years. After that, he reconnected with Marilyn Taylor, the same woman Halford had caught years earlier. They married in 1975, and she stayed with him until his death in 1987. His relationships outside of marriage followed the same reckless pattern. His secretary, Honey Merrill, had an affair with him while he was still legally married to Halford, but she eventually left. She got tired of waiting for him to make a decision. He lived for the moment, and that made commitment difficult. One of the biggest scandals of his life happened in 1954. when he ended up in the hospital with a broken leg. He had been injured during his television show and was recovering when his wife, Genevieve Halford, decided to visit. Their marriage had been troubled for years. They had married in 1936, but had separated multiple times. Still, nothing could have prepared Genevieve for what she walked into that day. When she arrived at the hospital, she found that Jackie wasn't alone. Marilyn Taylor, a dancer from his show, was already in the room with him. What happened next was impossible to keep quiet. The argument between Genevieve and Marilyn got so loud that people throughout the hospital could hear it. Staff and other patients knew exactly what was happening. That moment pushed Genevieve to take action. Shortly after the confrontation, she filed for legal separation, but their divorce wouldn't be finalized until 1970. That meant they remained legally tied for another 16 years. The affair didn't just expose Jackie's infidelity, it showed how broken their relationship had become. Marilyn, on the other hand, would become even more important in Jackie's life. Years later, after divorcing his second wife, Beverly McKittrick, he married Marilyn and stayed with her until his death in 1987. Jackie's marriage to Genevieve had been complicated from the beginning. They met while working in vaudeville, and from the start, their relationship had its share of manipulation. Genevieve pressured Jackie into proposing by publicly dating other men. Her plan worked, and they got married on September 20th, 1936. But happiness didn't last long. Jackie's love for partying and his refusal to settle down made their marriage difficult. Even when it was clear their relationship was falling apart, Genevieve wouldn't grant him a divorce. She was a devout Catholic and believed that marriage was forever. She also wanted to keep control over their relationship, refusing to let Jackie move on completely. Starting in 1941, they separated multiple times, but each time Jackie tried to leave for good, Genevieve resisted. Even after she filed for separation following the hospital scandal in 1954, she still wouldn't let go. Their divorce didn't become official until 1970, 34 years after they first married. Their relationship was a battle that lasted decades. From the start, Genevieve used jealousy to get Jackie to propose. Later, she used her refusal to divorce him as a way to hold on to power. Jackie, despite all his success, couldn't escape the chaos of his personal life. His relationships with other women were always tangled in the complications of his first marriage.